Welcome back to the Infamous Chief, where we dig into the cases that keep you up at night and expose the systems that keep letting us down. Today is a Brian Mackan day. A story of suspicious death, botched investigations, and a sheriff's office that, back then and till today, seems more interested in dodging questions than delivering answers. This one's been coming up for a while, and with new developments, it's time to lay it all out. So, there's been a lot of things that have been going on in the background. I want to talk about it today. Again, there are some very specific things I want to get into. Some interviews that I've done recently, but this is the current battle, and I need to go step by step to keep Tentacle Nation up to date. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's unravel this mess in Medina County, Ohio. Listen up, Tentacle Nation. If you want to keep this roll call tight, head over to www.theinfamousexchief.com. That's Command Central. From there, you can slide into Patreon. It's a monthly subscription with exclusive drops at least once a month, or lurk for free just to jump in on the polls and pretend you had a say. Discord. That's where the real chatter goes down. Think of it like the squad room. The coffee's cold, the jokes are bad, but everyone's running their mouth. And the best part, you don't need some shiny Facebook profile. You can show up as Detective Donut or Sergeant Snark or Detective Dimmer Switch if you want. Nobody cares. Just get in and start talking. Hit the links for YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Apple Podcasts. That's standard issue stuff right there. Old school? Not a problem. Email me. Feeling paranoid? Use Signal. Signal it over. Encrypted tighter than a rookie's first report. Want your voice on the record? SpeakPipe. Leave me a voicemail. If it doesn't sound like you're 3 sheets to the wind, I might even use it. Got a tip on a case? Fill out the tip sheet. Be as quiet or loud as you want. Do I burn sources? Ask them. Oh, wait, you can't. Want me to cover a case? Drop it under case consideration. Or keep it simple. Buy me a coffee and grab me a Brew Loud Be Heard mug. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a shift briefing. Be loud, be heard, shake the system until the truth falls out. So let's start with the basics for those that are new to the case. Brian Mackan was a township trustee in Lafayette Township, Ohio. And he was found dead at Chippewa Lake, Ohio in 2016 under circumstances that scream anything but straightforward. The official story, we actually don't know. But the rumors say, brace yourself. They talk about Brian stabbing himself multiple times, even though it contradicts their own report system. BCI's report, which is a high-velocity blood placement report. I guess it doesn't only have to be high velocity. I'm misspeaking here. But their own documentation states that it's highly unlikely that Brian stabbed himself, but the rumors are he stabbed himself, got in his car, drove to Chippewa Lake, and then decided to drown himself to finish the job. I'm sorry, but that's not an investigation. That's a script for a bad thriller, and the people of Medina County didn't buy it then, and only a very small, if you speak Spanish, un poquito, group believe it and buys it now. Why? Because the evidence, DNA, witness statements, lack of statements, video timelines, and lack of video timelines, the financial records that they put out as rumors don't match what actually is in there, points to a lot more questions than answers, and nearly a decade later, we're still finding boxes of evidence that the sheriff's office claims they didn't know about, but can, within the span of days, say that, actually, in the span of one day, was it 1 day? 2 days? I don't know. 2-3 days, maybe. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll say 3 days before the Channel 19 from the Lake Erie Lullaby shows up. They are somehow mysteriously able to say, hey, there's nothing new here. But we didn't know about the 5 boxes before. This case is as much about what was not done as it was about what was done, which was actually very little. Again, un poquito. except for spinning rumors that still persist to this day. Which brings us to the latest chapter in this saga, Sheriff Terry Grice's response to my inquiries. Now, again, I'm just backing up a little bit. I've given Sheriff Grice a pass because Sheriff Grice he was not sheriff when this initial investigation took place, but he is the sheriff now. He's where the buck stops. He did finally write back, and let me tell you, it's the same old dance we've seen before. He kicks things off with a polite pat on the head. I'm sure I'll be putting it here somewhere. Since taking office in 2021, we have been accessible to questions and concerns. Sounds nice, doesn't it? But let's cut through the fluff. Accessibility isn't accountability. Replying to emails or showing up for a press conference or a handshake doesn't mean you're tackling the hard stuff. It's optics, plain and simple. A shiny distraction from the fact that this case is still a mess of loose ends. The people of Medina County don't need a sheriff who's accessible for sound bites. They need one who's accountable for the truth. Then comes the dodge. And it's classic. Stick around here. We can certainly disagree regarding what constitutes new evidence. Oh, Sheriff Grice. That's some fancy lawyer talk right there. It's the kind of line you drop when you want to stall without committing to anything. But here's the problem. This case doesn't need new evidence. There's already a mountain of it. DNA profiles that don't add up, witness statements that contradict each other, surveillance timelines that make no sense, and financial anomalies that nobody's bothered to chase down. This isn't about finding a smoking gun. It's about having the guts to actually follow up on what's been sitting in your office for years. Slapping a vague label like new evidence on it is just a way to keep the can kicked down the road. Now, here's where Grice tries to spin it. The idea that this was not reviewed during the initial investigation is false. The fact is, these documents are work product. These are his words, by the way. So they were known by investigators. Full stop. If these documents were really known, then why do we keep hitting the same brick wall of inconsistencies? Why can't we explain why those who belong to the two unidentified DNA profiles? One of the sets of the DNA was on the door of a bloody room. Why do witness statements clash like they're from different cases? Why do surveillance timelines look like they were pieced together by someone who failed math? And I can truly attribute to that. If this so-called work product was thoroughly reviewed, we'd have clear findings, not a trail of unanswered questions. Calling it work product doesn't make it credible. It just makes it sound like you're trying to hide behind a buzzword. And let's get real for a second. If Grice or anyone in his office actually knew what was in those files, they wouldn't need to review with my team and follow up every time I ask a question. My list of concerns, basic stuff like why don't the timeline add up, shouldn't send them scrambling back to the file room. It should spark immediate, detailed answers. The fact that they're still reviewing tells you everything. They don't know what's in those boxes. They don't know what's been overlooked. And if they don't even know what's in their own files, how can they promise to reopen the case if new evidence comes in? That's not a promise. It's a cop-out. You can't even reopen something when you haven't even mastered what's already in there. I didn't let this slide. In my reply to Grice, I laid it out plain and simple. Thank you for your reply. I appreciate the acknowledgement, but my main point of contention is that I honestly don't think anyone in your office truly knows what is in those files. That is what frustrates me every time the response is, we will reopen if new evidence produces itself. There is already a substantial amount of evidence in existence. It just hasn't been pursued or acknowledged. I also made it clear that I'm not out here trying to sick mob on anyone, because I was told that the reporter who covered the 5 newly found documents, boxes, or old found boxes that no one knew about, was asked by Sheriff Grice if I had been the one to call them. Sheriff Grice, I have my own platform. I would not use the Lake Erie Lullaby in Northeast Ohio's non-investigating media to report this, as they did exactly as why I wouldn't use them. They let you spin a narrative without any follow-up questions to you whatsoever. That's not how I roll. My goal is to get this case the attention it deserves, and that means facing the evidence head on, not dancing around it with canned phrases like work product or we'll review with the team. Does that include Detective Dimmerswitch? Is he on that team? Medina County deserves answers, not any round of polite deflections. Let's talk about the community's reaction, because this case isn't just about the files and emails, it's about real people who've been demanding justice for years. Channel 19, part of the non-asking questions Lake Erie Lullaby, recently ran a piece on the Medina County Sheriff's Office and their now infamous "Oops, we just found 5 boxes" fiasco. The public didn't hold back. Folks who lived in Chippewa Lake at the time of Brian's death were quick to call them out on social media, to call out the absurdity of the official narrative. Stabbing yourself multiple times, driving to the lake, and then drowning. And by the way, again, if you're new, there was no water, or very little, in his lungs. That's not a conclusion you reach with a straight face. It's a fairy tale, and the community knows it. They've been pointing out the holes in this story for years, holes that only get bigger the more you look at the evidence. But here's where things take a tight turn for the worse. While the community is out there raising legitimate concerns, someone connected to the sheriff's office decided it was a great time to jump online and mock them. And this, not just any random commenter, not anybody, honestly, from the Disinfo cartel that I know of. This was the spouse of Captain Eric Boris, a command staff officer in the Medina County Sheriff's Office. Laughing emojis, dismissive comments, basically treating the public's grief and frustration like a punchline. Let that sink in. The wife of a high-ranking officer is out there ridiculing people who are questioning a botched investigation. That's not just tone deaf, it's a neon sign pointing to the culture inside the Medina County Sheriff's Office. If Captain Boris took this case seriously, his family wouldn't be online laughing at the community's pain. It's embarrassing for him, sure. But more than that, it's a window into the arrogance running through the sheriff's office. Instead of humility, we get ridicule. Instead of accountability, we get emojis. And that tells you exactly why this case has been stuck in limbo for nearly a decade. Think about it. A township trustee turns up dead under suspicious circumstances, and 10 years later, they're still finding boxes of evidence. If the sheriff's office cared, they treat every new development as a chance to right the wrongs. Not a joke to be laughed off on social media. This isn't just a failure of process, it's a failure of empathy. The message to the public is loud and clear. The sheriff's office isn't here for accountability. They're here to save face. The pain of a murdered, or at least very least suspiciously deceased public servant is brushed aside like it's nothing. When the wife of a captain posts laughing emojis under a news story about Brian Mackan's death, the mask slips and you see the indifference at the core of this department. I can say this from personal experience. There were several cases in East Cleveland that I was neither a detective at the time nor in charge of anything at the time that came at me later. And I clearly saw that, this probably wasn't handled the way it should have been handled. I didn't run from it. I accepted, hey, we made a mistake here. We failed. And again, instead of people coming online and making fun of those that were questioning what we were doing, I took it head on and attempted to make it right. Now, let's get to the part that really blows this case wide open. First, some crucial context. These 5 boxes only came to light because I filed a public records lawsuit at the Medina County Sheriff's Office to force transparency in this case. As part of the agreement for my voluntary dismissal of that lawsuit, the boxes were to be scanned in their entirety and then redacted according to ORC 149. We even discussed the redactions would be minimal and the documents would be provided to me in a rolling production. That was the deal. Full access, no shortcuts. But then comes this email from Rebecca at the sheriff's office. I believe she's the administrative assistant to Sheriff Terry Grice. The email is to Mrs. Macron, Brian's wife. And again, this wasn't even communicated to me. This was communicated to Mrs. Macron when Mrs. Macron asked, hey, can I come in and view these files as soon as they're back from being scanned? She wrote, and I quote, the boxes did not contain any new information and therefore were not sent out to be scanned, except for 2 file folders and 2 interviews. Hold up. This statement stops me dead in my tracks because it flies in the face of everything that was agreed on. The dismissal agreement was crystal clear. Everything in those 5 boxes Handwritten notes, documents, you name it, was supposed to be scanned and reviewed. Those handwritten notes are scattered throughout the boxes, so how can anyone claim that there's no new information? This isn't a minor oversight. It's a direct contradiction of what was promised. And just what is the basis of public records law? I didn't let this go either. I sent up a follow-up email to Prosecutor Hudson, laying out as plainly as I could. Rebecca indicated that the 5 boxes did not contain any new information, and therefore were not sent out to be scanned, aside from 2 file folders and 2 interviews from my understanding. However, the boxes contain handwritten notes throughout. I believe we had previously agreed that handwritten notes should be included in what was reviewed and scanned. This statement that the boxes held no new information appears to conflict with that understanding. I went further. This is the very idea of why I am not trusting what the Sheriff's Department is doing in response to these records requests. When determinations like this are made without fully accounting for handwritten notes or other materials that clearly exist in those boxes, it raises serious concerns about transparency and consistency in fulfilling those requests. So if I lost you, if you're falling asleep, wake up. I'm going to be straight with you. I'm flabbergasted. You can't tell me with a straight face that someone sat down, combed through 5 banker boxes, and decided it was all previously released. That's not transparency. That's a brush off. How do you let this happen, Sheriff Grice? Sidelining boxes full of handwritten notes because someone arbitrarily decided they didn't count as new. I'm giving the prosecutors the benefit of the doubt here, hoping they weren't aware of this decision, because if they were, our agreement was deliberately undermined. That leaves one explanation. This was a unilateral move by the sheriff's office, and it's a trust killer. No one could have gone through every page in those boxes and made that kind of sweeping conclusion without shredding any claim to credibility. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. This case isn't just about Brian Mackan. It's about what it represents. A public service, a man trusted by his community, dies under circumstances that defy logic. And the system tasked with finding the truth has spent nearly a decade dropping the ball. Boxes of evidence get discovered. Years later, basic questions go unanswered. The public gets mocked instead of heard, and every time we push for answers, we get the same tired excuses. Work product. We'll review. New evidence. This is how a culture of indifference festers. It's not about one bad call or one lost file. It's about a pattern of dodging accountability at every turn. The people of Medina County deserve better than this. They deserve a sheriff's office that faces the evidence, not one that hides behind buzzwords or lets its inner circle laugh off the community's pain. They deserve answers about what happened to Brian Mackan, not a fairy tale about a self-inflicted death that doesn't hold up. And they deserve a system that treats every new development as a chance to do the right thing, not a chance to double down on denial. So where do we go from here? First, we keep the pressure on. I'm not stopping, and I know you won't either. If you're in Medina County, or even if you're not, you can help. Share this video, talk about Brian Mackan's case, and ask the tough questions. Why are those boxes being sidelined? Why are basic inconsistencies still unexplained? You can, as a citizen, reach out to the Medina County Sheriff's Office directly. Their contact info is public. Ask them why handwritten notes aren't being scanned. Ask them why they're so quick to dismiss evidence they claim they knew about. And if you got information, anything at all, even if you don't think it's important or relevant, head over to my website, www.theinfamousexchief.com, and drop it in the tips section. We've got Discord community where we're digging into this case and others like it. So join us to keep into that conversation. This isn't just about one case. It's about a system that's failing the people it's supposed to serve. Brian Mackan's family deserves closure. The community deserves trust. And we all deserve a sheriff's office that doesn't treat a suspicious death like a joke. Sheriff Grice, the ball's in your court. Stop the dance. Open those boxes and give this case the serious investigation it's been denied for far too long. Before I close, I did receive an email while recording from so I wanted to be fully transparent. It states, Mr. Gardner, I understand your position. I want to keep you updated so you don't feel like we are ignoring you. I am meeting with the sheriff's office tomorrow to discuss the issue, and I will try to follow up with an update shortly thereafter. To the extent I am unable to do so before the end of the day, I will be in touch on Monday. All right, so there it is, folks, being ultra transparent to you. So to everyone watching, thank you for sticking with me through this deep dive. Keep sharing, keep questioning, and let's make sure the truth doesn't stay buried in Chippewa Lake. Be loud, be heard, shake the system until the truth falls out.